Hi, I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which brings you the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and little g, all the good things that people do to put that gospel of life into action. Again, we're concerned about life from moment of conception till natural death. And a lot comes in between. Now, one of the things that comes in between, it is the education of the children that we bring into this world. Today we have two guests who are very concerned about the education of our children, from little, kindergarten all the way up to high school and beyond. And they are the founders of the Florida Citizens Alliance. And they're kind of like a watchdog organization that makes sure that what the children are learning is solid teaching about how human beings should act, and concerns about the schools and what the schools are presenting to our children. So we have Pastor Rick Stevens and Keith Flaugh, and these two gentlemen are going to explain to us what they do and how they serve in protecting the life and souls of our young children. Welcome, gentlemen.
It's good to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you men with me today. Tell us, how did you decide to found the Florida Citizens Alliance? How did that happen?
Well, it depends which one you talk to. I often say it was kind of by accident. Not really by accident, but we kind of stumbled into this because we discovered people were concerned about a lot of things. And one of those things some years ago was something called Common Core. And the reason people were concerned is they did not believe their children were learning in school. And they were concerned about that. And so we kind of got people together and kind of decided to pick up the torch and start working on how can we improve education in Florida. A little bit of a process to come to where we are now. But essentially, that's where we started with the concern over Common Core. And it's grown since then. And we've seen a lot of progress made in helping parents have a voice. And there's a lot to do yet, but we're pressing on because we think it's important for kids to have the best education opportunities that they can have.
Right. Could you just explain, for our audience, some might not know about Common Core. Could you just tell us what that was all about or is all about? In some places, it is still in curriculum.
Yes, some places it's still in force. It's not in Florida public schools. Well, I should say it's being removed. It's a process to get it completely done. But Common Core was a set of standards that then resulted in a curriculum to support those standards and testing to evaluate those standards. And so parents began to look at all of the components of that, particularly the way they were teaching math, because third grade parents couldn't understand the math their kids were learning, for example, and began to see other ways that their kids were falling behind. And so they attributed it to the Common Core approach, which was fairly new at that time. And so they wanted something better because they knew that they could learn and they knew their kids were smart enough to learn. And so we began to talk to the people in Tallahassee about the standards, about the tests, about the curriculum, and raise awareness, which was quite a challenge at that time.
Sure.
But we began to surface the awareness, and lo and behold, when Governor DeSantis came along, he decided to listen to the people of Florida, and out went Common Core.
Okay, now we've come down a couple of notches over the years regarding our education system. It wasn't just Common Core, well, that was a big issue, but now we have what we call it an education in human sexuality, LGBTQ. Okay, and you're concerned about that too, aren't you?
We've been very involved in that issue about 5 years ago, and it's broader than just LGBTQ. About 5 years ago, we did a major study here in Florida where parents and grandparents came to us with about 40 novels that were full of pornography and LGBTQ content. And we created what we called our 2019 porn report. And we took that to the legislators and we shared it across our base, which at the time was about 110,000 people here in Florida. It inspired a lot of action, unfortunately not at the legislative level. It inspired a lot of action in local groups. Moms for Liberty, for example, has picked it up, not only here in Florida, but in multiple states. Another organization we work with concerns CCDF, Concerned Citizens Defending Freedom. They picked it up as well in 4 states. So what we're really trying to do is help, first order, is help parents understand what's going on in the schools. And when they see it, it's really easy to ignore it or not accept it if you don't see it there. But when you show them the live examples of what's in all of the counties in Florida with specific public records requests, it's pretty hard to deny.
Let me tell you something, folks. Keith gave me some of the workbooks. I don't know what they call them. They were pornography. They were literally pornography, what they depicted. It looked like cartoons, but they were vulgar. They were crude. And, I brought them to my office and I said to myself, well, let me ask my secretaries who have children and grandchildren, what do they think about this? And their jaws were hanging. I said, we never thought there was anything like this in our schools. But, we need watchdogs like you guys telling us, what is going on and then what we can do about it. Now, how do you gentlemen, you get the word out, and then, which I got to give these guys a lot of credit because they're not just like pumping out information, but they're challenging school boards too, right? You guys have been there. You've been right on the battle line. Tell us about this.
Well, we've said from the beginning that we are going to be solutions focused. Mm-hmm. And so just complaining about something doesn't really accomplish a whole lot. So what we've done from multiple fashions, we focus on the legislative side of the equation. We've put forth legislation. We've supported aggressive legislation. Some of your listeners may remember last year, the Parents' Rights in Education, which the left labeled "Don't Say Gay."
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no such thing, folks. Let me tell you, there's no such thing. There's no such law, "Don't say gay." The left-wing media made this whole thing up, and then you have people saying, oh, how bad that is. That's not nice. Folks, it's not there. Okay, sorry.
Well, this year, and we we made it as one of our priorities in our legislative agenda this year, was to extend that both downward and upward. So this year, it's actually passed both chambers, and it will. I'm very confident it'll go to the governor's desk, which now goes from pre-K, so 3-year-olds, all the way up to 8th grade. And literally tomorrow, the State Board of Education is meeting to implement a rule that actually takes it from 9th grade through 12th grade. So we now will be preventing or prohibiting the school teachers in the classroom from teaching gender dysphoria. So
it's like, folks, it's grooming. That's what it is. It's grooming. Right now it goes up to 3rd grade. Okay, well, that's nice. But 3rd grade, and after that you can teach them about, folks, I'm telling you the truth, it's perversion. It's perversion. And what they want to do to children with hormone blockers, and then, of course, they talk about they want to have a mutilation of their bodies, that they could conform to the gender that they think they are. This should not be being taught in schools, not just for, mental reasons. You mess up a kid's head. Let's face it, you're messing up kids' heads. But also, and this is why I love the idea that Pastor Rick is involved in this, he's a pastor. And if your pastor is not dealing with these issues, your pastor is a fake, phony fraud, fire him. All right, Pastor Rick, you got a job.
Well, I'm happy to say that my church supports all these kind of things, and they understand exactly what you're describing. And you're right, it's devastating to kids. It's devastating on so many levels, it's almost hard to describe. And yet, we still run across people that don't want to believe it's true. You gave a perfect example. Can't believe this is happening in our schools, but it is. Just recently, this is how insidious this stuff is. You have to keep after it. It's not, we talk about our successes and we're glad we have some, but this battle never ends. We just discovered a couple of weeks ago that there are a series of books called Assassination Classroom in some of our Florida public schools.
Wait. Assassination who?
Assassination Classroom. It's a series of graphic novels designed to tell a story of students taking high-powered weapons to school to kill their teacher.
Oh, my God, Lord, folks, you have the left wing, telling us that we have to get rid of guns, all right? mean, let's face it, it's the person that's pulling the trigger that's the bad person. But they're saying get rid of the guns. All right, just like make believe. We say, yeah, all right, maybe we should get rid of the guns. But then we have books that are telling them to use a gun to assassinate the teacher. I mean, this does not jive. It does not jive. There's something radically wrong here. What's the message behind that, Pastor? Okay, what's the message?
The point is, you can't make this up.
No.
The world is upside down, and in my view, in many respects, it's a mental illness at every level, not just with transgender kids who believe that we should be teaching our young children this kind of crap.
But why kill the teacher? Quick, Mr. Cameraman, quick, get me a couple of aspirin. I can't take much more of this. All right.
The why is, in my view, pretty simple. The left has set out for many years, 100 plus years, to destroy the family. And this is all part of the long game that they play. It's the pornography, it's the destruction and the LGBTQ, which is, it's perverse.
Okay, but explain. I still can't get my head wrapped around this. They want to stop guns. They want to get rid of the Second Amendment, but then go kill the teacher. Why would they do something like that?
Well, I don't think you should try to get your head around it because it's impossible. It's just impossible to explain. And I can't imagine that, but they defend this on the idea of free speech and that we ought to have libraries that make all kinds of information available to our kids. I keep reminding them that they're children we're talking about here. We're not talking about adults. And we have specialized libraries at our school, libraries for children. You know, there are things called medical libraries that serve the medical community. There are legal libraries that serve legal professionals. You and I know there are theological libraries for specialists in theology. Why can't we realize these are children? We need to have children's libraries, and we protect them from this kind of stuff because they're children and we value them and it's our responsibility. But somehow people don't get that, or they don't want to get it. And our parents need to pay attention and rescue their children from these situations.
So your organization, how does it sniff out this, this insanity, this assault on children, assault on families, assault on souls? That's what it is, assault on the soul. How do you guys do this?
Well, we've grown over the years. When we started this back in 2013, there were literally 55 of us in Collier and Lee County who decided to get involved in state and local issues. We focused at that time on two issues: getting rid of Common Core and stopping using the 10th Amendment, which is state sovereignty, to protect the Second Amendment. As we have evolved through time, in about 2016, we decided to focus exclusively on K through 12 education. We still focus on the whole Bill of Rights, but in terms of what's being taught to our kids to undermine our constitutional values. So we've grown to 250,000 plus people in our active database. We have a team of people this cycle, 6 of us, Pastor Rick, myself, a young mom who's a civil rights attorney, and several others. And we've evaluated over 85 legislative bills going through the process. And then we put out action alerts. So we make it very easy for the 250,000 people in our active database to weigh in on the Parents' Rights in Education bill, to weigh in on the bill that's actually going to be signed by the governor. I think it's moved through both chambers, to stop the mutilation of the bodies of minors, right, and puberty blockers. So we make it very easy for people who are interested in getting involved to add their voice to the equation, and that's how we made a difference, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and a lot of people don't quite grasp the whole concept of legislation, and if they go to read a bill, their eyes glaze over, and I don't blame them. It's not easy stuff sometimes, but that's why we have a team of people that work on this, and then we take what sometimes looks complicated because it's legal language. We put it in simple terms. We send out these action alerts, and people can sign up for them on our website, goflca.org, and they'll get them in their inbox. They can fill out a very simple form with their name, their contact information. that will send that message to their representatives. It's one of the easiest ways they can let their voice be heard. And we really encourage people to do that because we have discovered sometimes people say they don't listen, but when we speak as a united voice, it gets attention and we can begin to move things in the right direction.
As you can imagine, producing this wonderful program, Action for Life, it costs a great deal of money. We're going to need your help. So if you would like to donate to keep this good news program on the air, please go to your computer, your cell phone, actionforlife.net. And now for our thought for the day. Prayer is extremely important. We're not fighting a battle just against earthly powers. We're fighting a battle against evil. Please take some time each day to pray and ask God for the strength that you need and that we need to keep up the battle for life. Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So YouTube and you make a fine couple. You know what has also impressed me? That you gentlemen go face to face with school boards and with legislators. And tell me, how do they react to you? What do? Do they see you coming and say, uh-oh, here we go, you grab the podium and what do you do?
Well, they used to. Well, because they didn't want to talk about some of the issues.
Right.
But what we've discovered is that oftentimes they will have a civil conversation, and I've never been treated badly, even by representatives and senators I've met with that don't agree with us. So you can have a reasonable conversation, but what we've discovered is you have to be persistent and always keep going back, and you have to have a solution. So whenever we meet with them, we take our concern along with our idea to fix it. And if you keep doing that, and anybody can do that with their local representatives, with their city council members, if they will be persistent and come with a positive perspective and an idea for a solution, they can, if they keep at it, get a hearing, and who knows, they might just accomplish more than they ever imagined.
So could I ask you, Keith, do you ask people, hey, they're going to be discussing same-sex bathrooms at a certain high school. Do you get like a group of people to go and challenge the school board and say, oh no, that's not a good idea? How do you do this? What do you do?
Well, we have leaders in a little over 20 counties, and we're encouraging them and help them form what we call Kids First teams. Mm-hmm. And so the idea behind that is to form a small group within your community that then engages your whole community. And one of the examples is at school board meetings across the state. We've had volunteers in those groups read some of this pornography to their school board members. And in some cases, they were actually shut down. In one case up in Brevard County, the school board got up and walked out of the meeting because it was so perverse. They didn't want to hear it, but yet it's okay for our kids.
Right.
So we have monthly leadership meetings with about 150 people now, and we share real-time current topics and try to help those local communities be effective at engaging their whole community, not just the school board. Sounds a little cynical, but in most cases, you can't really change these school boards. They become, and I want to use a scary term, they become Marxist to the core.
Ooh, you hear that, folks? Marxist to the core. And that's the future. And that's why America, we're in trouble, gang. We're in trouble, like Ronald Reagan said, we're just one generation away from.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we do is that we encourage these groups to engage their whole community, not just the parents, but the grandparents, the business community, the faith-based community, and provide solutions. And for those, any of you that have heard me in the past, and you will hear me consistently say, there's really only one solution to this. Get out. Get out of our government schools. They are built on a secular socialist model. And if you really want to preserve our constitutional republic, get your kids out, homeschool your kids. We have a whole program we just kicked off to help local ambassadors train local groups to help Christian families do minis and micros. It's so easy. A couple of families with 10 kids can come together and do a one-room schoolhouse for literally $300 per year per kid.
But let me ask you something now. Isn't the picture kind of changing because freedom of choice in education? Pastor Rick, how's this going to work out? I mean, I think it's a great thing.
It is a great thing. It's a step in the right direction. We don't know all of the details because it's still being put together. But the bill that was passed in Florida is a big step in the right direction to give students freedom to choose their own education. And parents need to kind of wrap their heads around the idea that they really can choose now. It really is viable. People have been a little intimidated by, well, I don't know if I can do this, or concerned because of the money. There are many ways, including what the state of Florida is doing, to help parents provide a better education for their students. And I was just listening to a recorded book recently, and I found out that we really have an ideal poster child for homeschooling, and that's Thomas Edison. He was actually kicked out and told by a teacher he couldn't learn. And he went home and his mother said that's baloney, and she taught him. And we all know what contribution Thomas Edison made. So parents need to take courage that they really can do this, and there are ways for them to provide a better education for their children. And we'd be glad to help them.
Wow, how about that? I got to ask you something that I think especially guys like me and you are interested in, but there's like a whole bunch of pastors out there that, they don't say too much from the pulpit. Folks, I'm afraid some of these guys, either they're, wolves in sheep's clothing and they're playing for the other team, or, you know what I mean, or they're afraid. And, Jesus says, be not afraid. So, Pastor Rick, you're talking to pastors. What would you tell them?
Well, a lot of times people get intimidated because they're accused of being political. And I don't want them to be political. I want them to be biblical. And I'll go a step further to say, if you have trouble understanding this, consider this. I define political as the legitimate pursuit of power, because somebody has to make the decision. Somebody has to be governor. And so we entrust people with that responsibility. But there's also the citizenship aspect of it. And for a citizen, we want to pursue righteous government. So let's be good citizens. Let's be good biblical citizens and focus on that and not be discouraged because someone calls it political. That's just an attempt to silence us.
Yeah, folks, let's be honest with you. When you're dealing with political issues, oftentimes they're moral issues. And your pastor has to speak about that. And, sometimes, there are people who say, you cannot talk about politics in church. Well, folks, you might as well talk about nothing. Go get a Hallmark card and read that to yourself. And it's pablum. That's all it is. It's not the gospel. Gospel calls for action, like this program calls for action. It's a sword that cuts through the marrow and the heart. And you know what I mean. But if your pastor is not guiding you as to what's right and onto the issues of the day, he ain't doing his job. Okay, now, Keith, question for you is, do you endorse school boards?
No. We're a 501c3 and a C4. Most people don't understand the difference of 501c3. If you make a donation to us, you get a tax write-off. And we can use 20% of those revenues to fight on issues. We can never say vote for or vote against a candidate or an issue on a ballot. In a 501c4, it's an IRS designation. It changes that 20% to 50%, but if you make a donation to our organization, you don't get a tax write-off. But it does let us do voter guides. We get involved every election cycle across the state, but predominantly right now we're really active in about 7 or 8 counties with Christian Family Coalition, Anthony Verdugo, and we do voter guides, and we actually will never tell you to vote for or against, but we can put check marks on candidates that agree with our values.
How do you like that, folks? I like that. Does your church give out voter guides? Well, you should examine that next time elections are coming up. Make sure you're looking for a voter guide. But if it ain't there, folks, you tell your pastor it better be there, or you go someplace else. Excuse me. All right. Yeah, that's what we do.
Why don't you tell us what you really think?
Well, I usually do. Me and the gang know each other for a long time. That's why we could be completely honest on this program. Okay, your vision now for the future of education here in the great state, the free state of Florida.
We have to privatize all government education. It's really that simple. If you go back to before the founding or before the civil rights or the Civil War, all of our education was private, and we had a literacy rate of over 95% of our population. Ever since the Civil War, we've adopted this socialist model. It was pretty benign. I'm older than a lot of your listeners, but it was pretty benign when I was going to school in the 50s and 60s.
See, I don't have any memory of that at all. I was a mere youth at the time. See, you old guys know that stuff. I don't know.
But it has become much less, it has become much less benign. In fact, it has become very aggressively Marxist. It's controlled by the unions, and if you all you have to do is a little bit of homework to understand. The unions are proactively trying to destroy the family.
Holy cow. Hey, folks, you heard what these two fine gentlemen have had to say to us today. Florida Citizens Alliance, they're on our side, all right? So they're for action, Pastor Rick's for action, Keith's for action, I'm for action, and I know you are too. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.